Making money or making a difference? Pick one. Or perhaps make some money so that you can make a difference. But is there a third option? How might your money make a difference? Today we're talking about impact investing here on the Maxim Institute podcast, and we're very lucky to be joined by Steven Moe. Steven is a lawyer, he's experienced in community governance, and is really passionate about impact investing. Welcome to the podcast, Steven.
Tēnā koutou. It's really wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
So perhaps to frame up for our audience who may not be familiar with impact investing, what are we talking about here?
It's really a different paradigm of thinking about the word that you're using, impact. So if we were to go back in time, people might say, oh, you want to do some good? You should set up a charity. Oh, you want to make money? You should set up a business. And this is really blurring both of those conceptions and saying maybe there's a way that you can do a bit of both. In other words, when you have your money, you could actually invest it and know that you're having an impact through the cause that you're supporting, but you would also get financial return. So instead of saying, I'm giving you $100,000, you might say, I'm investing $100,000, and I expect financial return from that investment. So it's a different way of thinking about it. But if I can maybe use a picture, imagine somebody going to the bank and you've got some money and you're investing it in a term deposit and you're making some money, you're getting interest, but you're not really having societal impact through that term deposit with a bank, which is probably owned by somewhere offshore. This conception would say, instead of investing the 100,000 in a bank, why don't you invest it in a purpose-driven business or a group which is doing some good in our society? So it's a way to blend the old traditional way, which is investing for financial return, with a new way of thinking. I want to get impact in what I'm doing as well.
So I can see the difference between, traditional investing and impact investing, in that you're doing some good whilst making a return. But I guess, why would people consider impact investing rather than simply charitable giving? What was wrong with the old paradigm?
I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And it's important to say, I'm not meaning that you would replace all of the charitable side of what we do, because for many organizations, it is a charitable endeavor. The money is needed to give food to people who are in need. That doesn't get replaced by what I'm talking about. But there are many charities and many groups who are doing good, where you could look at what the impact that they want to have. And you could say, well, actually, we could frame this up in a different way. So for example, there's a great group down here in Christchurch called Pathways. What they do is they help ex-prisoners into jobs. So instead of saying, well, we're just going to educate people, we're going to give them some wraparound support services, that's all really good, but we're doing it with donations. They actually employ the people so that they can actually have jobs, get sustainable income. And so you're doing good while you do that as well. So I don't think it's a case of we got to throw out the charitable approach to only now do impact investing. But for some areas that people care passionately about, an example I'll give because I know it quite well is social housing. Social housing, we have vast needs to build more housing in our country. And to do that, we need money to build the housing. It's kind of basic. But if you were to go to a wealthy person and say, instead of giving me $50,000, would you invest $5 million, get financial return, and know that there's now 40 houses which have been built? So it's quite a different way of thinking about it, but it's really helping organizations to achieve impact as well as be financially sustainable.
So I guess the example you give there of housing, obviously housing is quite capital intensive. Is that the kind of area that really lends itself to impact investing, or what sets apart? Charitable causes are a wide range of things. They're a wide range of social goods. What kinds of things really lend themselves to an impact investing approach?
Usually it's having some value that we can agree on that is measurable. So that's why housing is relatively easy to do this in. And that's why we've been doing that at the Community Housing Funding Agency, because the houses, you can point to it and say, well, that house was built and it's worth this much money. It's a lot harder to say, here's a societal need, like we've got to, drug addiction or domestic violence or solar power or, like name the big issue. Some of those, it's harder to say, here's the monetary value that we have created by providing that service or creating this offering. So it is challenging, but what I would encourage listeners to think about is, are there aspects of what we do that actually could be monetized, and we could actually explore impact investing alongside our traditional charitable approach? So an example is a church that I've helped down here in Christchurch. They have normal Sunday collecting, people are donating, they get money that traditional way. But they also identified that in their community, when people pass away, there's a funeral, there's a lot of money that gets paid to the funeral service providers. So they've set up a company which provides the funeral services at a lower cost than the normal funeral service providers. So they're providing a service to their local community in a way that meets people at their potentially most desperate needs. They've just lost someone in their life. The church gets used to run the services. They're able to provide the catering afterwards. So the point is that example of a business is meeting the needs of the community, advancing the purposes of the church, but now is a sustainable income stream for that church to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars every year. So it's a different mindset from what we might traditionally say is, well, we provide counseling, come and access our free counseling. This is actually going a next step and saying, could we have a business or could we have a monetary way? And then, of course, impact investing would say, it's going to cost us money to set up the funeral business. Let's get investors to put in the seed capital. They'll get paid back and they'll get the knowledge that they're helping hundreds of families in their time of need.
So then would one of the strengths be of this impact investing approach is that it allows scale because you can draw in extra, I guess, capital investment that traditional charities may struggle with?
That's exactly right. And think about in a charitable context, you might go out to your donors and you might say, would you support us with $100 a month or $500 a month or give us a one-off donation of $1,000? Not many charities have the conception of, if we had $1 million, if we could get investment of $1 million or 5 million, and actually it might be within their reach to set up that community center or to set up that sports facility or to set up that cafe that will reach out to ex-drug addicts. Those things that cost a lot of money, if you reframed it this way, you might actually go out and be able to get support from your current donors who would invest the money. There'd be two ways they could do it, either with a debt, so we are loaning you the money and we'll get paid back the loan, or through equity. So we're setting up a company, we're issuing shares in the company, and you'll participate in the profits, assuming that they come at the right time. So there's different ways for investors to then be aligned with a charitable cause and actually come in and support it, not just with words or a monthly small donation. They might actually be able to invest it for more. And the funny thing is that sometimes these investments are at least as good a return as a term deposit rate in your local bank. So yeah, it's a new way of thinking, but it definitely opens up the opportunity for new discussions.
So you've alluded to a bunch of interesting projects that are taking this new approach of impact investing. I wonder if we kind of jump up to 30,000 feet, how would you kind of describe the state of impact investing in New Zealand? What's the market like?
What I'm finding is that there's a real opening up of understanding about this, because traditionally investors, so this would be potentially people who are trustees of trusts that hold large amounts of money. And many are religious groups, not only, There's community trusts. But those groups, sometimes they'll be sitting on literally $100 million or $500 million. Their past conception was, we will only consider what we do with the profits that come from our investments. So this, what I'm talking about, is challenging them to think about, maybe we need to think about how we invest the money that we have. So if we were set up to support education of children, maybe we need to start investing in startups that support education of children, and we can get financial return. So the point of this is, I'm seeing a massive shift in understanding from trustees about what they can invest in, and therefore an opening up of more opportunities for groups to seek out money from these large funds. I wrote a legal opinion on this about empowering impact investing, which I've just put out, available for free. I addressed it to the largest community foundations in New Zealand. So, for example, the Rata Foundation down here in Canterbury, Foundation North in Auckland, they have about $1.6 billion. So they're actually quite proactive on this. But what I want to see now, that people are understanding it, is that there's more opportunities which open up. And hopefully your listeners or your viewers of this will realize, well, maybe that trust that I've been involved in either could invest, or we could go out and seek other people to invest in our upcoming project. So there's lots of change that's happening right now. There's a group called the Impact Investing Network, which is coordinating a lot of the thought leadership in this area. They have a free newsletter, they have events. So there's a lot more understanding of this. 6 years ago, didn't really exist. So it's definitely a trend that's happening literally as we're talking, and it's changing quite quickly. And yeah, there's examples of this where it does work. So I'm happy to give you a couple more if it's helpful.
You're brilliant. Well, I was wondering, you mentioned earlier that Community Finance has just launched New Zealand's largest ever impact bond. What is that bond, and what does it hope to achieve?
So it's called a social impact bond. And what it's doing, this one was essentially for $200 million. And we got a Standard & Poor's rating of an A+, which is a really, really high rating, which allowed us to go through the support of ANZ, the bank which has gone out to the market. So they've been really amazing at taking it to institutional investors. So this is not what's called retail, like the normal people walking on the street. This isn't something that's available. Oh, I'll put in $50. I'll put in $100. This is significant, 2 million, 20 million, that type of level. So the institutional investors have now invested. We just closed that first one of this type. And so that raised the 200 million from institutional investors. So the way it works is that money comes in, and then the Community Housing Funding Agency, which is the entity that is doing this issue, goes out and finds the community housing providers who need the money to build the housing. So to put it simply, we're like the dating app in the middle. We get the money from the investors. We then find the actual people who will build the houses. And it's names that you'll know, like Habitat for Humanity and Salvation Army and Court. Really well, they've been doing this a long time. But maybe traditionally, if they went to a bank, it might be hard for them to explain, we're building social housing. And the bank is going, well, where's the margin here? And how does this work? So we come in and we're able to offer those providers money to then borrow. And then over time, they repay it. And then it gets repaid to the people who invested. So it's fairly simple. It's been done in other countries. We set it up in 2019. James Palmer is the CEO, and he's really been the guiding, leading force behind it. I'm the chair of the board, so I get involved in strategy. Where are we heading? How are we doing? But it's a great example of, people might say, Steven, this sounds really theoretical. Sounds good, but could it work? Well, it is working right now. So it's not just it'd be nice to have it. It's actually, we've now finished that round, means we're at 400 million that's been raised. And obviously, we need more people putting more money in the future. But it's not the only example. To give an example in the context that may resonate with your listeners, there's a company called Christian Savings. And Christian Savings goes out and gets people putting money in term deposits with Christian Savings. It then loans it to churches who are building buildings or doing other things as a church or a Christian group. So I'm on the board of Christian Savings, so I know that quite well as well. But that's in the hundreds of millions of dollars that's been raised as well. And I would categorize that as a form of impact investing. So there's different types. And it's a case of now, I think, continuing to raise awareness, which is why I love to be able to talk with you.
Brilliant. And so obviously there's the awareness portion of it. And over the last 6 years, we've seen significant growth in this field. Are there other challenges that the impact investing market has to scale? Are there other obstacles in the way that you'd like to see shifted?
The main one I would say is this awareness. So we've touched on that, getting people to understand this is a different way to have impact. Because I think there's a lot of people out there who are putting their money in banks, not thinking through, I could put it somewhere else and have financial return and have impact. So that's the first thing, but we've kind of covered that. The second thing, the main thing is that we need to have more investment opportunities. So I mentioned the housing in a way that's easier for people to get their heads around, because we all understand, like, there's a house and it's worth something and I'm investing into it. But what I would like to see is entrepreneurs coming up who are coming up with novel and different solutions to the biggest problems we have, whether that's climate change or if it's social issues or if it's, you picked the big problem that we've got, infrastructure. There's all kinds of needs. And so what I'd like to see is that we're having more startups, more people embracing this way of thinking so that there's more opportunity for people who get on board with the concept to say, well, I put some money in social housing. I'd really like to put something towards, and then fill in the blank of the issue. But that to me would be the ideal thing. And I think it's happening because the next generation is embracing these concepts and is able to communicate more clearly among themselves that, hey, we want to know where our products come from. We want to understand what we're investing in. So I think that it is a growing area, and it wouldn't surprise me if it doesn't become even more opportunities. Like, think of your local cafe or somewhere like that. What if they had an option for you to invest and you knew that the cafe was employing people who were recovering from drug addictions or who had some issue that meant that they couldn't get work easily? Like, I think there would be a market for consumers out there to start investing, but we have to create the opportunity. And then the final thing, if you'll let me, is I think we need a new legal structure that sits between charity and for-profit company. And I would call it impact companies. And you would be required to state your purpose in your constitution, and you'd have to report on how you're doing compared to the impact that you said that you were wanting to achieve. So I think that would help to really fast forward us. They have this entity type in England, so we could learn from what's done there and then adopt it over here. That would make a massive difference as well.
So far, we've been talking mainly about what I'll call the private social impact bond market. Another change that is occurring is that the government, through its social investment agency, is talking about setting up a different type of social impact bond framework for certain types of social services or welfare provision. How do you see that connecting with the private social impact market?
I think it's aligned with it, and it's an example of the fact that this isn't just a little trend which is here for a day and it's gone tomorrow. I think it's an example of the fact that government itself is realizing they want to see impact, and that maybe the past approach of here's 100,000, hope it goes well, like, that's not what they're going to be looking for in the future. So some accountability with what's done with the public money. So I think it's an example where clearly it's aligned with private impact investing. And I think it's showing that it's going to be growing rather than decreasing.
Brilliant. And so I guess to bring our conversation to a close, many of our listeners are not institutional investors. They have a wide range of professions and interests. But for people just man on the street, how would you suggest they get involved with social impact investing?
Well, it's an easy thing, but all of us probably have KiwiSaver, and we've been putting money away. Where is your KiwiSaver invested? It's a simple question, and one that I have to answer for myself too. There are websites. So Mindful Money is a really good resource. You can go there and you can type in where your KiwiSaver is invested, and it will tell you what type of entity that means it's invested in. So I think there's a little bit of homework that would be required. But if you think that's not even changing much, but the point is you could move your KiwiSaver from institutional investing approach at a mainstream sort of place. And maybe you want to research and find somewhere that actually part of their portfolio is investing back into New Zealand society. So a shout out to some examples would be Simplicity, Pathfinder, and Generate. Those are investors, KiwiSaver funds. They've invested into the Community Housing Funding Agency approach. So by putting your KiwiSaver there, you're actually getting exposure to impact investing. So that would be a simple way. But then also I'd urge your listeners and people watching to say, well, I actually have quite a bit of money that I've built up over here in my rainy day fund, or for my retirement, I've got a separate amount. Maybe I could take some of that, maybe not all of it, but maybe take 10% of it and go look at an option like a Christian savings, or look at a local example where there's a startup that needs money. They're developing an app to help children to learn or to not be bullied or something like that. Actually, if you invest into it, you'll get financial return and you're helping a cause you care about. So I think there are ways that people could approach it in a really proactive way. And if people are interested, I wrote a report for the Center for Social Impact on what is impact investing. I'm happy to share the link so that people can find out more.
Brilliant. It's good to have concrete steps to come out of a podcast like this. It's not just, as you're saying, it's not just an abstract theoretical approach, but something that's happening now and growing really quickly. So all the things Steven's mentioned we'll include in the show notes. And thank you very much for joining us, Steven. Really appreciated having your expertise. Hope you have a great day.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed talking with you. And I did forget to say, I do a podcast interviewing people about this type of thing, which has 467 conversations now. So that's called Seeds Podcast. If anybody would like to know more, we can have the link available. But I really appreciate the chance to talk. These are important conversations for the future of the country. So thank you for shining a light on this.
Very welcome. Great to have you on.